Where is Mr. Mehmet? He's going to record the webinar, and also in YouTube, people can join and watch, and also recording. We can also find the webinar from YouTube. Mr. Selim, welcome, but Mr. Mehmet is absent.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening.
Good afternoon from Indonesia, I think.
Good afternoon from Tbilisi.
Mr. Selim, do you know where Mr. Mehmet is?
I think he is ready.
Can we start? Because he is going to record.
A minute, please, just a minute.
Okay.
We are ready.
Yes, we are ready. Can we start?
Yes.
Okay. Very welcome to all. It's wonderful to be with you, and I feel privileged to extend my warm welcome to all presented here. Thank you all for finding time and being with us in today's webinar. The Socio Virtualization webinar has been organized with the project partnership of UK Consulting, Canada Green Torch Consulting, and London ITA Con Consulting. And soon also there will be the 3rd London International Conference by the support of UK Publishing and Consulting. The topic is for the conference, international conference, is the new normal, challenges on education, business and social sciences. It's on the 3rd of June. So it's an attention to the academicians and researchers. Maybe they can also want to join us. So today, just a little housekeeping before we get started. If you have any questions during the presentations, please type them into the chat box. We will have time for questions at the end. Each speaker has 10 minutes for their presentations, and we can find time for the questions to discuss. To keep the quality of sound functional during the webinar, please mute yourself when you are not sharing. So now a brief explanation for today. Today's topic is the socialization agents embrace socio virtualization in the new normal. Why are we talking about this topic? This webinar aimed at engaging the different agents in the socialization process, a school, for example, a family, an environment, how they changed, and media, how it is related and affected by the pandemic with the virtualization, and how the individuals and societies shall deal and respond to the challenges in these trying times. The new concept, socio virtualization, means paying more attention to relations and time in the virtual environment describes exactly this situation. People spend their time in the virtual environments than in the society. How can this process go with the agents of socialization? We will discuss these relations. Now, we will turn the time over to speakers. We have talented and expert speakers for this program. May I now request to introduce our first speaker for the day to our distinguished audience. Dr. Sophia is from Birmingham University from England. She's having a PhD on social policy with a bachelor background on sociology. She's an expert in leadership and management. She's going to speak about COVID-19 and the education sector. Dr. Sophia, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Professor Kurt, and a very warm hello to all our participants. Thank you very much for the invitation to join you all during this session. So yes, I'll be talking about my my experiences and the experiences that others have shared with me about the new norm of socio-virtualization in the education sector. And specifically, I'll be looking at the kinds of challenges that are being faced by students in particular. So can everybody see my screen here? Okay, great. So in particular, the focus will be the what I would argue to be the main stakeholders in the education sector, and that is students. So what I'd like to do is to start off with a brief recap of something that I spoke about in my keynote speech a couple of months ago, and that's some basic statistical information regarding COVID-19 and the education sector. So for example, the World Economic Forum found at the end of last year that 1.2 billion children across 186 countries were affected by COVID-19, and they're having some kind of interruption to their education or changes, major changes to their educational experience during this pandemic. In the UK, 65% of students who were polled at the end of the year last year and early this year were reported as having no face-to-face or in-person teaching for the bulk of last year, from March to December of last year. So that's university students with no face-to-face teaching at all between March and December of last year. A common thing that was being noticed was that teachers or teaching practitioners, lecturers, professors, were all expressing an urgent need for training in information and communication technology, and this was reported by the OECD. And internationalization and student mobility has been put on indefinite hold. So where we have situations where people have been able to travel to other countries, whether it's the professors, whether it's the students themselves, it's all currently on indefinite hold for now. And as a consequence of all of this, higher education institutions in particular are facing crippling financial challenges. Now, if we think about the main challenges for students and some of the suggested solutions, the kind of solutions that I'll be putting forward are not necessarily, it's not rocket science, actually. However, it's just designed to be practical solutions based on personal experience and the experience that others have shared with me. So one of the challenges is, what do we do with the classes, or what do the students do in terms of whether they should opt for synchronous or asynchronous lessons? Is it live lessons at different times, different time zones? Should it be recorded lectures, or what's the way forward? And it's been found so far that the most appropriate method would be a hybrid learning situation. A little bit like many industries, work industries have found that actually working from home is perfectly possible. And so a hybrid working environment is also something that should be, aimed for. Intermittent opening of institutions. So in many cases, emails have gone out and communication has been made to staff and to students to say that the institution will be open. People are preparing themselves for this mentally, only to be told that either that's been pushed forward, or that they go to university for a short while and then there's an outbreak of COVID and then they're back home again. So perhaps what we need is something like more bubble days on site, where there are certain year groups or certain colleges or certain, even if it's some form of regular confirmed and continuity, some sort of something that people can rely on as being normal ways and more certain, because part of the problem with this whole pandemic is the uncertainty that ensues in different settings and so on. One of the things is that a lot of students initially were excited about not having to have exams and assessments in the conventional way, but then later felt kind of robbed about this. And I think that what we need to do as practitioners is to rethink the kinds of assessments that we're providing students in various combined forms online. So virtual assessments in combined forms. And so not just the simple multiple choice type questions, but something significantly more sophisticated, and that will really allow the students to demonstrate the skills and the talents, etc., that they have. Placements, practicals have been cancelled. So whether this is laboratory work, field work, working in various industries and so on. So I think a lot of people have to think about more carefully about a number of different digital project placements. So this obviously works well when it comes to IT-based learning, but we have to think a little bit more outside of the box in terms of digital project placement opportunities for virtualization and socio-academic virtualization in the forum, you know, for in the educational sector. One of the things that's also been problematic for a lot of students, and indeed some staff too, is waning motivation and discipline. You know, so initially they're excited, and initially they've been diligent and you know, punctual and disciplined about logging in and working, but that's waned quite a bit. And I think part of the things that we could do here is to involve learners in the decision-making process more. So not only give them ownership, but together with the ownership and that right and decision-making comes accountability. So if they make particular choices about how their part of their learning and assessment will take place, they also have to have the responsibility that goes with it and the accountability that would be with that too. There's been the issue of peer learning deprivation. So to what extent have students not been able to gain as much from a socio-virtual environment as they would in a face-to-face environment? But I think compulsory group tasks and trying to think outside the box as far as peer learning virtual tasks are concerned, there needs to be more of that. So of course we have the presentations and so forth, but some other kind of thinking outside the box in terms of how that can be done effectively. There is an assumption, an automatic assumption that many of us make, that the youth of today, or youngsters or students, are much more IT competent and literate than their professors, or, you know, typically tend to be. And that's not necessarily the case. You know, often this could be that they lack the basic, the absolutely fundamental resources that are needed, whether this is an internet connection or the hardware, you know, the software that, or the software that's needed. And then, I mean, even for example, there are so many different learning platforms and teaching platforms. This is the first time I personally am using TeamLink, for instance. So there are so many different things that the students need to familiarize themselves with. And so in the various educational institutions, there need to be some sort of workshops or webinars or days on site or something like this, where people can get together and to brush up on their IT competence and literacy. There's also the issue of online etiquette, you know, so the only way to deal with this really is for the practitioners to set out very clearly the socio-virtualization rules at the outset, just like, for example, Professor Kurt just introduced some housekeeping rules at the start of this session. So same thing in the learning environment, socio-virtualization rules need to be set out. There's the issue of one-to-one questions, tutorials with the practitioners. There need to be clear dates, clear schedules for drop-in schedules, sessions and meetings and so on. There's the question of value for money. Is a socio-virtual environment, learning environment, the same as a face-to-face environment? Well, we know that there are distance degrees, we know there are open university degrees and so on, but the overwhelming majority of students of different ages in different countries have a face-to-face learning environment usually, and it's simply not the same as a socio-virtual environment. And I think it would be unfair for institutions to not to adjust their fees to take on board this point. I think it's necessary for the fees to be adjusted. And sadly, so far, in most institutions and cases, that adjustment has not been made. There's the physical side of it in terms of screen glare and impact on the eyes and eyesight, for instance. I, for example, normally would work 12 to 14-hour days. But now, since this pandemic and since this new online setting, I can barely cope with about 3 hours max a day before my eyes start to hurt and so on. So there need to be shorter virtual sessions. You know, if the lessons are normally 90 minutes, they can't be 90 minutes online, whatever. There needs to be some sort of an adjustment. And then finally, there's also the issue of things like mental health and loneliness. We can't underestimate the fact that actually a lot of the youth of today who are so heavily dependent on their social circles are really finding it difficult to cope with this pandemic and the lack of proper virtualization, you know, socialization, and yet it's a kind of a dichotomy and a kind of a something that's bizarre, because they spend so much of their time online normally, and yet you know, so now they are forced into that situation. They're struggling mentally, but there needs to be more regular contact and offers of support. So thank you very much. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Sophia. And timing is very well. Thank you. Thank you for your valuable insight on education and this socio-virtual environment. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You're
Now,
welcome.
I want to introduce our second speaker for the day. There is Mr. Selim. You want to say something? There was a hand or raising hands from you. Maybe the questions we can take at the end of the webinar, and it's also for timing, it can be good for us. Now, I want to introduce our second speaker for the day. Dr. Hemp is a director, a producer, a writer from USA. She's founder of Global Dialogue for Justice. Dr. Hemp has a PhD in curriculum and instruction. She holds a BA and MA in communication studies, and she's an expert on communication. Her presentation is about media and socio virtualization in a new normal. The floor is yours, Dr. Hemp.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kurt, and thank you to the organizing committee, the Keep Publishing, and to everyone. Thank you so much. It is a great honor for me to be invited and join amazing people here to share our experiences and ideas about how we can effectively work together and perhaps support each other while we're dealing with the drastic changes in our world today in the new normal. So you can see I'm a bit older, but as a scholar, I'm fairly young, and I'm a product of blended learning, blended and hybrid classrooms surrounded by digital natives. So I feel quite comfortable around them because I raised one myself. And I realized the enormous responsibility I had as a mom and as an educator that includes fully accepting the virtual environment that young generations spend most of their waking hours in. So it was necessary for me to learn the tools they use to communicate and connect with each other that would not have been possible if I didn't listen to them and accept them as my co-creators of knowledge, my co-designer of contents that are relevant, relatable, and interactive. And that should bring our attention to the media. That is one of the most expected in our society, to take the lead in helping communities and disseminating important information that can potentially help save lives in times of crisis. So today, the media has transformed significantly, not only because of the massive advances in technology, but the pandemic has made many of us realize that digitalization and multimedia has a tremendous impact in our lives in the new normal. So my presentation includes a brief description and examples of how traditional media has transformed to new media, the process of multimedia production, some examples of multimedia contents, and finally, the issues regarding user-generated media contents, and address questions about their value, quality, credibility, accountability, and maybe have time to address how do we foster collaboration toward designing and creating credible contents that are interactive, relatable, and relevant, and also aim to inform, educate, and create opportunities for engagement about the most pressing issues we are facing in the world today, and particularly in the pandemic world, but also to fulfill our obligations, people like us in this forum, to take on complicated issues and collaborate with people from different parts of the world with different backgrounds. And maybe we can work together to hopefully stopping many of the injustices that causing enormous suffering of people in many parts of the world. And here's a video I'd like to share with you that I filmed in Munich.
people dying in Syria right now. And there is in Syria right now, people, they don't have food. They don't have electric, they don't have diesel, they don't have fire, they don't have anything, and they are dying without food. And we are looking like nothing. We're not talking about 1 person or 2 persons. We are talking about millions of children.
I think it's heartbreaking to hear the story of what's happening in Syria from the people from Syria themselves. And I hope we could do more.
And as we know, the media evolved rapidly, and the impact to our society, and not only due to the advances in technology, but also due to the historic changes the world is facing today. So I'll share you about the journey before and during the pandemic. So it looks like the video is not gonna work, but we can continue. So the journey, gathering information and creating user. Play that. The media production has evolved as a result of digitalization. There are sort of challenge to the news industry with the rising popularity of independent publishers who didn't have the background in the traditional media. So me as example, a scholar who decided to travel the world instead of teaching at the university and publishing scholarly publication through the traditional publication process before and during the pandemic to gather information and perspectives about how people see the world that have been going through historic changes with now the crisis that we are facing. And so shows traditional media that was only text, sound, audio, where people, how, you know, the traditional media has been just us as consumers and audience.
We have just lose the connection, I think, with Dr. Hemp. Is she here, Dr. Hemp?
Yes, I think there's a little bit connection problem. Maybe come back.
Okay, we can continue, or I can just wait for a while for her to make a new reconnection. Dr. Hemp calls herself a digital scholar. And what she's doing is interesting. She travels around the world and try to make digital records to explain the situation, what inside of those countries and cities. She has, I think, 10 or 15 countries and as a target, and she wants to travel those countries with the information what she wants to gather, and after getting those information about those cities and countries, they are going to publish these digital datas in one university in USA. She said, but I forgot the name of the university. So she has also a collaboration with one academician from one university, and she also make the practical way of the research, and she tries to touches the refugees and their problems. She tries to touches to touch the people, but they have difficulties in their time. But this is also a social virtualization issues for her to give this digital datas in media or through media, social media, to share with the other people. She tries to do that. Okay, she's not here, I think, or she has not returned. We can continue with our next speaker. I want to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Putri from University of PGRI, Yogyakarta. I think I pronounced truly, from Indonesia. She has a PhD in anthropological sociolinguistics. She is an expert on education and social sciences and social linguistics anthropology. She's going to share her research and experiences on community and socio virtualization in the new normal. Dr. Putri, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Professor Kurt. Hi, everyone. I'm Elsa from Indonesia. I want to talk about the situation in Indonesia. I think it is the kind of example what happened in some countries with the commonality of a community. I want to share my PowerPoint here. Okay. Is it clear? Okay, I want to talk about online regular social activities during pandemic in society, especially in some people in Indonesia. Actually, I looked at this situation in several places in Central Java, especially in Yogyakarta. Then the background, I think I have talked this research before, that the corona pandemic has spread widely throughout the world, including Indonesia. The spread of this pandemic has disrupted all community activities, both economically, politically, and so on, and also culturally. So in Indonesia, social interaction is the most important. When the pandemic happened in Indonesia, it is disrupted. So most of regular social activities are not working well. Many people are affected by corona and they feel alone. I think Ms. or Dr. Sophia has said before, people with the situation in corona pandemic feel alone because they are ostracized by their neighbors, considered to be spreaders of the virus. Many societies then are individual. So here I want to see the situation with the theory, activity theory. So I want to see the object-oriented, subject or internalization, community or externalization, mediation, tools, division of labor and rules. So before a pandemic, object-oriented, especially in social activities, the goals of the activity system that have social and some properties. So we can see this in our discussion. Empirically, as I said before, Indonesian society is multicultural societies, grows with the varieties of structures, and Indonesian society is also known as communal societies, live together in groups. This is a key word for the Indonesian society or Indonesian community. Multicultural society that generally lives communally is rich in local wisdom to survive and develop in all situations. Local wisdoms of multicultural society is closely related to social interaction and activities. But during corona pandemic, the social interaction and activities in communal society of Indonesia is disrupted. This is the related to the theory that I said before. Object-oriented, the goals activities before Corona pandemic is togetherness, harmony, respect. Sorry, can I stop this presentation because here it is azan? Is it okay, Professor Kurt, or we should continue? Professor Kurt?
Everything is good, clear.
Yes, we can hear you. Please continue.
Okay. The goals of the activity system have social and cultural properties, especially togetherness, harmony, and respect for the environment. It is before Corona pandemic, but during Corona pandemic, for the environment, there is less respect from the society. And then subject of internalization, there is actors involved in the activity. There are males and females of the communities, and such as community neighborhood association. I think it is one, just happen in one neighborhood association. So in Indonesia, we know it is rukun tetangga, so just one group. But during pandemic, using online, there is several, it can happen in several neighborhood association. And then community or externalization, social context, such as recitation group. So it is like a kelompok yasinan, kelompok arisan, and then some traditional activities like larung, and then mediation tools. The tools in before Corona pandemic is face-to-face or directly, but during Corona pandemic, the tool is used online media. And then division of labor. Before Corona pandemic, it is hierarchical structure of activities. It is we can see the hierarchical structure of activities. But during Corona pandemic, it is we can see clear hierarchical structures of activities, and the rules happen directly before Corona pandemic. But during Corona pandemic, the rules happen by online media. And then this is the conclusion to pool social activity that I have said before. This is the example, arisan virtual. So you can change our social gathering during Corona pandemic. So they use virtual, they use Zoom here. And then this is Yasidan at the start of Corona pandemic. So they don't use online media, but one leader of Yasinan have the Yasin in mosque, and the others hear from their own house by using hearing the loudspeaker from the mosque. But after the pandemic, but during pandemic, and then they use virtual like this, using Zoom here. They use Zoom to carry out the Yasinan. I think that's all for me, Professor Kurt. It is the situation during and before Corona pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Putri, for your valuable sharing on community and social virtualization in the new normal. I think also the people find a new way to communicate each other with their experiences and try to find a new, better way Also, your place is so, I think, interesting. We can hear the voice of some
Because
roasters.
I'm in studio with
Okay.
drawing studio here, so there's some trees, some birds, so you can hear everything from here.
So natural.
Okay.
So natural. My background is not natural, but it's so natural. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, I want to introduce our last speaker, Professor Culfa. He's from MyLife Istanbul Consulting from Turkey. He is the founder and director of his agency. He has a PhD on psychology and pedagogy, and he is a psychologist pedagogue with a bachelor background on sociology. He is an expert on family, marriage, and couple counseling. He's going to speak about family and socio virtualization in the new normal. Professor, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much indeed. I was very busy because of my sessions during this pandemic and coronavirus period. I'm very busy because of this reason. I couldn't prepare any presentation because we are live during the sessions against the fighting against the coronavirus and giving help for the other people, inshallah. This period, globally very difficult and dangerous period. Let me focus on my speech. Virtualization in family and social relations and communication problems and solutions in relationships in new normal. I mean, coronavirus and pandemic period and after. Communication, as you know, which has taken place from the beginning of its history to present and has a great share in all developments that are still happening, unfortunately, can cause big problems when used in an unhealthy way. During this period also, unhealthy way communication way is very dangerous, maybe more dangerous than coronavirus. Because of this reason, we communicate with each other in family, in the street, in anywhere else. We have to use healthy communication methods. Our communication mistakes that we ignore, and then simply in today's conditions affect us and causing the relations to break down complete and even an increase in hostility. As you know, because of misunderstanding problems, the couples fight against them, and children fight against the parents, and the people fight against the government. Because of this reason, communication very important for us, especially during the coronavirus and pandemic period. Failure to meet the most basic expectations, both in our family marriage life and in our bilateral relationships, in our friend groups, and in our other social environment, creates some wounds on the person. It may be inevitable that the wounds caused by communication errors are reflected in the language during communication. In fact, this reflection in communications can lead to communicative failures, problems, showdowns, and then some ruptures. What are the basic communication problems, bilateral relations during the pandemic period and after, during and after coronavirus period? To find basic communication problems, let's focus on where the communication problems started and how it continues. Excitement, its peak. There is a tip. As we all know, our relationships often have a set of emotional responses that we expect. nodded, oh, or I can hear you say, yeah. When we do not get the emotional responses that we expect from our emotions or fight to get that answer, or work to get what we want, it is expressed in communication. It can be reflected in a critical, responsible, accusatory, or even egocentric attitude. When an attempt it is made to identify, to culprit and show that he is right, two parties have already formed an automatic relationship. However, even we want to law, it cannot contain biases. Two people who have decided to walk on the same road cannot be on different sides and separate fronts. This is where the miscommunication or unhealthy communication starts that can be dangerous for the relationship. Okay, let me summarize my speech and talk. I may send this speech text, very long it is. The basic mistakes made during the communication can be listed as follows. Very important technical errors during the communication, bilateral relationships, especially in family during the coronavirus period and after. During this period, we have to be careful and focus on this. Focusing on the past and continuously opening all notebooks or books, especially during this period, many people staying at home and then many times going on the way, watching TV and making cook and other talking. But after then, after one period, the children trying to find misunderstanding and past events, and couples also trying to fight against and open the old notebooks or old events and bad events especially, I mean. The other second technical error, believing on the talk or not believing and not caring against the other couple. There are a number of defensive mechanisms that each person uses, especially ignoring, avoiding, and ignoring are just a few of them. Evaluating the thoughts, feelings, and reactions to any event, situation, and attitude in a relationship causes us to see the effect of situation on our partner, as well as to ensure correct communication and some communication accidents. During my therapeutic sessions, I am trying to correct the misunderstanding and unhealthy ways of communication. And other technical error, short and wall knitting. If you are offended or formally disrupt communication by building thick walls, now you and your partner are dealing with an unsolved issue. In addition, you didn't even leave a defense zone. What will we do in this situation? First of all, start by thinking about what this situation will give you. In this case, one or both sides may experience a feeling of guilt. Someone who feels guilty will find it very difficult to reveal the full potential of what they can do for the relationship. Let's always keep this in mind. Remember what when a person feels safe by nature and he can struggle. The fourth technical error of communication, I mean unhealthy communication ways of communication, judgment by generalization to cruise. Judging or blaming by generalization puts the person in despair. In fact, it causes him to see himself as inadequate and always like that. On the other hand, when we talk about the judgment and accusation while communicating, we have to accept that the person in front of us will listen not to understand us, but to defend himself. When we come across accusation and judgment sentences, we immediately activate our primitive brain, while this situation causes us to break away from the rational thinking and some other the control of emotions, anger begin to dominate the people. Thus, the results we need to draw from the incident may vary. However, communication is essential. What I understand, what I am told. The fifth one, reading the brain. Is everybody okay here, listening to me? Inshallah.
Yes, yes, we are with you.
Okay, reading the brain. Finally, we can talk about the behavior that we can describe as trying to read the brain or thinking instead of others, which is a very big problem. I'm fighting against such kind of communicative problems among the parents, among the couples, among the friends, among the societies. And inshallah, after this period, we will win the game against the coronavirus and pandemic period. Thank you for listening to me. Thank you very much again. And beyond the Turkish people, around the Muslim and Turkish people, and all human beings beyond them, inshallah. See you.
Thank you, Professor Culfa, for giving your valuable insights on family and socio virtualization. I think Dr. Hemp is here with us.
Kurt, sorry, there was a...
Dr. Hemp? Are you? Okay, it's nice to meet you again.
Yes. So did you want me to show
So you are here, and we can maybe finish we have time, your presentation.
Okay. So should I maybe just show a few videos from the full presentation? And so then I will. Okay. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to show you the video that I filmed in London. And so this is one of the collaborative project that I have.
Are you sharing it? We cannot see anything. Yes, yeah, that's good.
There are thousands of kids.
Say this is not just an African problem when they lose their lives. This is a basic violation of human rights. So irrespective of what color you are, if you believe that every person deserves to be free, whatever color they are, and then I implore you to do something about it.
Today, there are thousands of kids fighting for survival in Africa, the Middle East, and Asia. Women are subjected to trafficking and victims of brutality and violence. It's important to remember that human trafficking and violence against the innocent women and children are also happening in countries like the USA, Canada, and the UK, and other rich and powerful nations.
I would like to welcome my special guest and our special guest from Slovenia, the man who hold the record for landing the smallest parachute, the smallest and fastest parachute in the world, 35 square foot, Mr. Ernesto Gaenza. Hello, Ernesto, thank you so much. You're gonna say hello on live on Facebook, right there.
The guys, they set the microphone to quite high now.
We are live on Facebook, guys. Your friends and Facebook. Just say hello and yeah.
Ben Merjjena, Tıp Fakültesi 4. sınıf öğrencisiyim. Türkiye'deyim. Bundan aylar önce babam kaçırıldı. Ve o günden beri babamın bulunabilmesi için uğraşıyorum. Yetkililerin harekete geçmesi için uğraşıyorum. Ama hiçbir işlem yapılmıyor. Ve bu yüzden babamın bulunabilmesi için benim uğraşmam gerekiyor. Sizlere sunumumda babam Hüseyin Galip Küçüközyiğit'ten, kim olduğundan, nasıl bir insan olduğundan, nasıl bir baba olduğundan ve kaçırılmasından, kaçırıldıktan sonraki süreçten, alamadığımız cevaplardan, çelişkili ifadelerden, babamdan sonra kaçırılan birinin bulunduğu zamanki ifadelerinden bahsedeceğim. Size bu adaletsizliği anlatacağım, büyük hukuksuzluğu anlatacağım. Günümüzde hala insanların kaybedilebiliyor olmasına, bu konuda kimsenin hiçbir şey yapmıyor olmasına inanmak gerçekten çok güç. Babam gerçekten yok ve yetkililer gerçekten hiçbir şey yapmıyor. Bunu anlaması çok zor, buna inanması çok zor. Ama hiç kimse babamın bulunması için bir şey yapmıyor. Eğer bu zorla kaybedilmenin farkında olursak, bu konuda bir bilinç oluşursa belki babamı serbest bırakabilirler. Başka birinin kaçırılmasını engelleyebiliriz. O yüzden herkese sunumumu dinlemeye ve bu olayın bilincinde olduğunu göstermeye davet ediyorum.
But instead, I took the risk and I traveled the world. I want to continue learning about the world, about people.
I think what you're trying to do is a great, I would say, like great mission. You know, is to let people understand what's going on. I think people is aware of certain things. Sometimes they don't want to see behind a point, and sometimes it's just they're not aware of the situation. And I think what you're doing is bringing that people, is bringing that energy and that knowledge of what's happening. And I think that's great.
So the applications of multimedia can bring opportunities and alternatives to empower creators and publishers whose work continue to be scrutinized, but should be scrutinized, but also have the opportunities to bring our communities together. So today I talk about, show some of the impact of digitalization and multimedia through the videos that I shared, and the examples of how the media has transformed. So our world is going through tremendous challenges due to the pandemic, and people in many places in the world are suffering. And we have our own sufferings and struggles, but we also have the responsibility to make a difference, taking on different roles to help members of our communities in need, people and animals alike. So we need to be willing to work with people in society we have known all our lives, and the people who spend most of their waking hours in virtual environments. Those of us who have the training and expertise to navigate the spaces between these communities must do more. We need to step up more, take more risks in creating contents that are out of our comfort zones, and keep pushing the boundaries in everything we do, especially today in the pandemic and the new normal. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hemp. It's nice to we come to end your presentation, and we have seen we have watched the other short videos also. When you were not here, I tried to explain the process, what you are trying to do with digital scholar or digital travelers. Yes, generally through media, she wants to share what she has found in those countries with these people, what the problems they have, what the things they are suffering. Yeah, thank you, Dr. Hemp. And I think we are good for now, and we have come to the end, because you can also see it's in Indonesia, it's evening. So
in Indonesia, it is evening in Indonesia, you know, because my background is black right now.
So we get the message from your background that it's evening, so we can and we can get the result from this webinar.
Yeah.
Any questions I haven't got? So it's time nearly at the end of this webinar. It was a pleasure being with you during the webinar. I would like to thank everyone who made this meeting possible, and to the organizers with the project partnership, UK Consulting, Canada Green Torch Consulting, and London ITACon Consulting. And I thank our speakers for their interesting and wonderful presentations. One more time reminding about our LIC conference. Soon there will be the 3rd London International Conference. Topic is the new normal, challenges on education, business, and social sciences. It is on the 3rd of June, to the attention of academicians and researchers. Maybe they can be interested in those topics. Thank you all once again for coming, for joining us today, and we will see each other next time, I think. Thank you very much, and bye to everyone. And next time, I hope you will other chances. And we are greeting the countries, Indonesia, England, Turkey, and USA, and other countries that they are watching us. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.